There are many ways one can express being a radical. Some use violence, some use political upheaval, but then there are others like Diana Hart.
Oh, it's just so magical out here in the morning. It's so beautiful and just so much elation just from being out here in the morning when the sun is coming up. It's
Master gardener, change activist, and childcare provider who threatens high produce prices at the grocery market with radical food growing practices.
This community garden was installed to give people the opportunity to grow their own food. Not only are they taking control of their own food, but they are getting things at its peak of ripeness and freshness when the nutritional content is going to be the highest.
I think there's like 113 households, like these are households that don't have fruits or veggies, period. And nobody knows how to cook them. So we're providing them with things that they can just eat right then and there. And then, hey, you want to try this? This is how I cooked it up. Or, hey, this is what we're doing. And so there is no money in their household.
I'm Diana Hart, and we're standing here at the location of our Walnut Street project for Poplar Village Gardens. This is part of an environmental justice grant and a neighborhood improvement grant to provide safe soil for people to grow their own food in. Part of Poplar Village Gardens' mission is to build community, and I really feel like we can't do that by putting up fences. So what we are doing is we are removing this fence, and in the place of the fence, we are putting in this wildlife hedge. We lay down 2 layers of cardboard to kill the grass, and then we'll put a bunch of mulch over top of it. So our goal for today is to expand the size of the width of the wildlife hedge.
This is just us hanging out, wanting to provide extra food for our neighbors and make a better place in this neighborhoods.
We are interplanting among the shrubs a lot of different medicinal and culinary herbs and some herbs that will help the trees. We've got kale, the yarrow is right here. We've got garlic out here and onions.
Think of water runoff, you think of a cooler spot, you think of a place to relax, a place to just get away from the noise, all those types of things. That's what these 3 acres are.
Here at Poplar Village Gardens, we celebrate spring by doing pea planting day on St. Patrick's Day. It's one of the cold weather crops that we can grow now that will do better in this weather than it will in the warm weather. And we're going to take a look. We planted a bunch of seeds on St. Patrick's Day, and what we basically did was we laid our seeds down here. Instead of disturbing the soil, we laid the seeds down and then covered it with straw. And this bed is planted the same. One of the things that we like to do is we like to practice sustainable practices, which means in this bed, the chair is going to be the support for the vining peas. So after this chair became unusable as a chair, it is having a second life. The wood you see here, we have saved because when we assemble the garden beds, we will put the wood in the bottom of the garden bed and allow it to decay, and it will be part of the feeding of the plants. We took some trees down on this lot and we left the remains, and what we've done with all of these beds is we put some trees in the bottom of each of these beds, followed by some mulch and wood chips in order to fill in the cracks and all of that. This is a bed where we've put the mulch on top of the wood, and then we put the greenery on here because we had it available. That's part of permaculture too, is trying to use the resources on site instead of bringing them from outside or from getting rid of them and sending them off-site.
We've got a few things going on here today at the farm. First, setting up compost bins here. So there's 3 different compost stalls with different materials that'll go in it. So it's set up with pallets, and then what I'm doing is I'm stapling chicken wire in here so everything stays contained within its own stall.
This is our indoor worm bin, but we just have 2 totes, and let me see what we got in here. There's some worms in action. One of the benefits is that we can take our compost in the winter and put this in here. It becomes food for the worms, and the worm castings are excellent fertilizer. And I wanted to talk a little bit today about taking control of your own food and how that is a revolutionary act. I have the traditional older basement, but being a revolutionary, I like to have at least 3 different ways of preserving food. The deep freeze is one way. We can have it fresh, of course, or we can keep it in our refrigerator for a period of time. This here I got last summer. And in here, we've been keeping all of our lacto-fermented vegetables. These were things that I either got from my CSA or things that I have from the garden. And so when somebody told me that growing your own food was a revolutionary act, that's something that I can really get on board with.
Been working on getting these garden beds planted, and one of the main things I've been working on is putting up some of these green posts and bars across the top so that we can create kind of a support structure for the squash to vine up. We're going to tie string on, and it's all like very minimal store-bought materials, so just trying to find what we had around to use to set up this system.
We're standing right here next to one of our hugelkultur mounds. These were little mini mounds. I had a lot of wood left over from trees that we had cut down, and I used them as the base for each of these mounds. So the mound got a layer of logs, which was covered by a layer of wood chips, which has then been covered by compost. Poplar Village Gardens, this is our 3rd summer as a working farm, and a lot of what we have had to do is infrastructure. In this particular summer, we have the luxury of being able to put some money into some big infrastructure projects, and what we are standing next to is part of that. What we decided to do was we decided to build a pergola, and what we have done here with the roof is we have installed some SPF protected polycarbonate roofing, so that there is a roof on here so we don't have birds flying over and dropping their droppings in areas where we might be handling food. I'm standing here next to some new structures that are replacing the 3 barrels that we moved out to put underneath the pergola. One of the things that we try to do with every structure that we put on the property is we try to make sure that if there's a way to have rainwater catchment, we put in and install rainwater catchment. So in this location, what we've done is we've taken 3 of the barrels that were at the back corner of the house, and we've connected them to the gutter and downspout on this new structure, and they are connected to each other. I'm standing here in front of our container garden. Right now, our containers are as they were at the end of the season last year. But that is something that we've been able to do, where we've been able to glean food-grade buckets that we can then use as containers for growing more food and vegetables. We like to do that a lot in our use of found items in the garden. Once it's become unusable in its typical way, we try to find a way to make it useful in the garden. So we've got a rocking horse, we've got some old lawn chairs, we have some pieces of a bunk bed. There are things out here in the yard that were discarded by others that are brought into the garden to be able to be used again.
This is our 4th year, and we are now providing spaces for the neighborhood, their own places to grow fruits, vegetables, whatever they choose to, in eventually 19 raised beds on this property.
We're over here at 816 Walnut Street in Fort Wayne, Indiana. This is the site where we are installing 19 community garden beds for use by neighborhood residents. So this will be a community garden bed. People in this neighborhood and the surrounding neighborhoods will get preference for these garden beds, as we want people to be able to grow food as close to their homes as possible.
So the people that came through were more than willing to go door to door in the neighborhood and offer up food plants. This is done all by volunteers and Diana's funding.
I started off as a volunteer last summer in 2021, but loved it so much that I just never really stopped coming back, and now I work here pretty much full time, and it means the world to me to be out here building community with such great people who have such great intentions.
And so the first year was pretty much our volunteers that were coming in and getting involved, and then we were going to the food pantry down the street, which was just like overflowing with the number of people, but not with product. And they had like no fresh fruits or vegetables or anything like that. So we were dropping off plants every week, twice a week, fruits and veggies, and they would just take them in the wheelbarrow, or I'd drive them over there, we'd unload them, and then, you know, go from there.
Well, my name is Linda South. My part in helping her mission is to be a delivery person. Once a week I come and see what she has ready to donate, and I take it to Miss Virginia's food bank, and they are always happy to see me and see what strange and new things she might have grown that week. And I just think she's a fantastic person.
I'm Jacob Irving. I've been working here, volunteering here for about a year now. I live about a mile south in the adjacent neighborhood. Today we're putting up the last of the raised beds for this Walnut Street project. So we should get this finished up and hopefully get started planting here soon.
One of the community garden beds that my neighbor has planted, and you will see we've got some really nice plants in here. His crop is doing very well. This is really exciting to have other neighbors growing food. I think it really empowers them.
It's a pretty awesome place to just come and hang out at and just sit.
I'm sitting on one of the benches that's facing our art wall. In every area of Poplar Village Gardens, we tried to make sure that we have some park-like seating so that people that want to observe the gardening, maybe can't or don't want to participate, have an opportunity to sit and enjoy the activity that's going on around them. In permaculture, and since we're trying to do permaculture style, it really wants to make a place for every living creature. That includes people. And one of the things that we're trying to do is make people spaces, and this bench would be an example of that. And also some of the newly mulched pathways, stepping stones through the fruit tree guilds, and some of those kinds of things will be our way of expanding and making people spaces in and among this lovely natural environment.
I work here at the garden because I like nature, you know?
I basically want to make sure our world is a better place around, because there's trash everywhere that people just don't care about.
How you doing? My name is Kewan Green. I met Diane through an online website advertisement that I did. And today what we're doing is we're getting rid of all the weeds and we're giving a place for her plants to grow and the garden to progress.
Hello, my name's Dylan, and I'm out here trying to make some money and trying to make this place look better.
I'm going to start a little bit with how we involve children with the food production, and one of the things that we do with them is we teach them about the plants, edible plants that are in the yard, as well as the things that we grow in the garden. Their participation is part of their education. When they come to my program, they participate in all parts, and today we are harvesting something that will later be in our lunch. This is one of the kids' favorite foods. It makes a very dark pot liquor. I feel always the darker the better as far as vitamin and nutrient content. And we're having the kids today pick some of the lamb's quarters out of our elevated planter. That's part of our weeding, but while we are weeding, we are also harvesting food. So I'm standing right here next to a project that's in process. One of the things that we wanted to do with this area of the park strip is make it so that it is food producing for both humans and insects. The first part of that process is actually to kill everything that's underneath. And then we can take the sod off the top and we'll be able to plant spring bulbs, white clover. I thought I'd talk a little bit about why we let things grow and how we manage the things that we don't want while we are allowing the things that we do want to grow in. I'm standing here next to a stand of grass. This has been allowed to grow. I don't particularly consider grass to be a valuable crop in this area, but what I do find is that by not mowing, I am inviting in a lot of other things that I do want. This is curly dock. Leaves are edible and pretty tasty in the early season. Now we're later in the season, they are not going to be edible or tasty. This is alfalfa. Now, I suppose that it can be used as a food plant. Animals use it for a food plant, but the thing that alfalfa really does is it creates biomass and brings nutrition up from the roots. Now, one of the things that I have really been exploring on this property since we've determined that the soil is safe is I'm really into foraging. So I've been researching and kind of looking into the plants. The fungi are coming in. That is super important to the growing system because the mycorrhizal fungi network that exists between plants allows them to communicate with each other. If a dying tree wants to, it can actually donate its remaining sugar production to another tree. The native plants are the heroes of these fruit tree guilds. When they go in as little babies sometimes and you think that they're not going to make it, but native plants, they really want to live. One of the super cool things that happens in the spring, I planted a lot of native plantings in the garden as well. This is the time of year if you think that you don't have a crop, there are foods that you can forage for, like these dandelion greens before the blossom comes on. Those are just perfect for human consumption. One of the plants that we have to deal with a lot here is the black walnut. The black walnut tree, leaves, roots, all of its parts produce a chemical that inhibits the growth of other plants. To eradicate these by using some poison on these, but I can tell by the way that this plant is coming up here that it is getting ready to go to seed. I really do believe that if I let them go to seed, if we do not try to control them in any way, all of a sudden it becomes an unmanageable problem in the areas where we are growing food.
These are the raspberry trellises, and we've been working on weeding and remulching these beds. So we're really learning what works well where in the garden.
One of the things that I really like about this trellis system is it can be in place. We can either use it or not use it as we decide to rotate our crops. Sometimes it's not going to be needed. These are leeks. We have a lot of lettuce and Swiss chard and broccoli and beets in here. There's a little bit of eggplant and tomato that we were able to transplant out. The wind came through here and it took down the canopy for our wash and pack area, and it also did a pretty fair amount of damage to the front end of this greenhouse. And I really thought that it was going to be history, but a friend of the garden who has been following us made their parents, who are engineers, come out here and help me put this shed or this greenhouse right. So I was able to load the shelves up, and so it is, with the exception of a couple of places, it is completely full.
There is no doubt that the Poplar Village Garden is not only a garden, but a family, where both plants and community grow and children learn from positive role models on how to make the world a better place. The garden has been around for years, giving back to the community in places like St. Patrick's Food Bank, Miss Virginia's Food Pantry, and the homes of urban downtown Fort Wayne. Get connected with the volunteer workdays, workshops, adopting a guild, the harvesting team, or even just booking a tour of the garden. There are so many ways to become involved in the revolution at the Poplar Village Garden, and you too can make a change in the world to become a cleaner, greener place.